Business 101 students, hi, Catherine Robertson here. All right, so we are going to be looking at chapters for week 5, chapters 9 and 10. And first, we're going to be looking at 9, and if you follow along with the PowerPoints, you will see that we are looking at figuring out how to acquire assets and finance operations through funding. And so there are multiple ways that we see businesses try to do this. Whether it's through direct contribution from the owners or different funding opportunities. There are also ways that you can measure a business, right? And so remember, for this class, we're working on a project that is you choose a company and you are going to hit certain areas relative to that company and put them into a short, basically you're doing like a short book report on your company of your choosing, publicly traded company. And so hopefully by now you've looked at I think I have the Apple annual report up there. You should be able to go whatever your company is. Like for instance, Disney, you can go to disney.com and then you can find under the disney.com website, you should be able to find the investor side of the website somewhere at the bottom. Sometimes it's at the top. It'll say investor relations, investors, things like that. And you click on there, and that's then the portal for finding the annual report. And the other way you can do it is you can Google annual report. It'll take you, sometimes I found that students think that might be a little easier, and it takes you right to that part on their website, that link. All right, so sometimes you will see things relating to, or in particular, not sometimes, but always, and in particular, on the annual report, talking about things relative to ratios that are really like ways to measure the company versus other companies in the industry. And also ratios are measuring two items, like how they stack up against each other, how they relate. And so things, for instance, in chapter 10, in chapter 9, we start to talk about things called a ratio called a liquidity ratio, meaning the ability of a firm to obtain the cash it needs to pay its short-term debt. Basically, how quickly can it go liquid? Does it have, are all of the assets that it owns, how much of them are liquid, something they could turn into cash right away to use to pay bills? And so we saw during COVID, companies that had were able to transform some of their assets quickly into cash, or had a decent portion of liquid assets, then they were able to survive and meet the demands of some of their debt payments more easily than companies that had low liquidity and they could not. They had a lot of assets maybe, but they couldn't turn them into anything that they could use to pay their bills. And so oftentimes this idea of it's just how our assets stack up. All right, and so there are a couple other leverage ratios, another one. And profitability ratio really looks at the measure the rate of return a firm earns on its various measures of investments. Like how much is it actually making, or ROI. Asset management ratio. This is a really great one. Asset management ratio measures the effectivity of a firm in using its assets to generate revenue. So you might have two firms, and you might have one firm that has, we'll say, 200,000 in asset, which make up a number, and another firm that has 400,000 in assets. You would think that the firm that has 400,000 in assets would be able to make twice as much money, right? Like, how are they able to, or twice as much revenue? Because they have so much more to work with, right? But sometimes we see firms that are very efficient, right, at using their assets and resourceful. And they might be able to take that $200,000 worth of assets and make a bunch of revenue. And the firm that has the 400,000 in assets, meaning a lot to work with, might not be able to turn it into much revenue. So that then is the ratio. Do you have a bunch of assets, but you still can't make much money? Or are you barely working with much and you can make a ton of money? So those two areas, that it lets us know how, when we look at different companies, we can kind of size them up against each other using ratios. And so chapter 9 talks a lot about budget and different ways that you can finance in order to generate capital for your business. And then in chapter 10, we start to talk about the financial markets. And I have a nice, actually, I did see, if any of you are watching the news, that, Warren Buffett is stepping down as the CEO for Berkshire Hathaway, a company he started. So that'll be interesting to see in the future how that company moves forward. multi-billion-dollar company. Anyway, Warren Buffett, how to invest for beginners, 3 simple rules. And I believe this is a video he talks about, that might be how the stock market works. Mr. Market and his the textbook, Ben Graham textbook, Intelligent Investor. So chapter 10 talks a lot about the markets and what we look at in the markets and how businesses are made up of stocks. So that's chapter or week 5. So make sure you are keeping up with the homework. Make sure that you are looking at and thinking about your paper. Make sure that you watch all of the short videos relating to chapter 10 and 9, and you review the PowerPoint as well as read the chapter in the text. As always, if you have questions for me, see Robertson at ec3pa.org or text me 814-490-6473. And don't forget, be working on your paper because we will be fast approaching, now that we are entering into week 5 as of Monday, we are fast approaching the end of the term.